Let me make sure that my voice is audible. Hey! It seems a little quiet. I wish I could hear my own voice. Oh, I'm sure someone will tell me. So, let's go ahead and tell the world that we're streaming, since apparently Twitch now knows. Hooray! That's not what I wanted to open. Let's go ahead and tweet. Streaming game dev drawing spaceship parts. Again here. Oop, that's an empty tweet. That wouldn't help. And then on over here. Grip paste. I have a feeling that this is down. Alright. In that case, I won't try and tweet through it. So, last week we started thinking about the structure of the ship that we actually wanted. I do have some issues with all of the forward-facing components of this ship. And, of course, we're going to be trying to highlight them in this particular case because they are the interactive elements that the player should be able to see fairly clearly. Alboecha says, Twitch loaded the stream in the background for the first time in half a year. Hooray! Anyway, there's a whole bunch of forward-facing stuff, which means that we're going to have some forward-facing embrasures, some forward-facing fenders. So that's the first thing I'm going to build today, and then we're going to go on to build engreebled parts, engines and stuff. But for the forward-facing element, we've already got something like this, which is kind of close to what we want. But I think what I'm going to do is actually have a version of this. Come on, there we are. Which has a different shape. So to do that, what we're going to do is modify this existing part, because that's always the easiest thing to do when you're working with stuff like this where it doesn't matter. So we're just going to grab, we don't need these, we'll just edit, 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 and then grab this and pull it in, like so. And then we're going to want to fill that face, which is a Control F, I believe. Grid fill, thank you. And then we're going to want to fill this face, grid fill again. Perfect, perfect. That's actually really well done. Congratulations, Blender. First time you got that right. So with this in mind, what we're going to do is we're going to create a bumped element, an element which is not flat, because that will give us some sort of fun curve that we might be able to use for some stuff. I don't know whether or not I want to just bump it, but that's what we're going to just try right now. The key here is that I want to bump it exactly 1 unit, so that the lining it up with Snap-on still works. But with that in mind, we've now got this set up here where it's obviously something screwy. So what we can do is we can fill in some of these elements in a way which hopefully will make it look fun. Maybe, maybe not, right? Who knows? But we'll give it a shot. So what we're going to do is just grab some of the stuff to make it look a little bit more interesting. And I think that we're going to want to put some cuts in here, but the problem, of course, is that this is not loop cuts. I mean, this is not a loop, so cutting a loop here is no good. But what we can do is cut a loop the old-fashioned way by hitting K and then literally just dragging a loop down. As long as we can see through the entirety of the mesh. I guess holding shift doesn't do anything, but that's okay. Good enough. Boom. And when we look at it, you can see that it only cut this side of the mesh. And I don't know why that is, because I had this on. Ah, that's where it is. I didn't have it on. I thought I had it on. I did not. Try that one more time. This time, cutting all the way through the mesh, please. Boom. Nope. Come on. What does it take to cut all the way through the mesh? Is it seriously just not going to do it? I guess it's just flat out not going to do it. Alright, well in that case we'll delete the half of the mesh that's not getting cut and put a mirror modifier on. By the way, there is a severe heating problem with my apartment today, so you're going to hear a heater running in the background pretty continually. Can't do much about that. Hopefully it doesn't bother anybody. And just massage this until it all seems to work. And now this is a loop cut, but it doesn't go through underneath, which is obnoxious, but, you know, who cares? No one's going to see the inside. That cut really didn't go any deeper than surface level. I thought I knew how to make it so that cuts would. Clearly, I was wrong, because these cuts did not go through. That one went through. There we are. So now these loops go all the way around, like so. See? And that means that we can bevel them. Hooray! And once we've beveled them, we can massage them just a little bit. The top one separately, I think. Like that. And we're going to want to massage these guys, I think. That's just something that doesn't look quite right as it is. It's a duck! So I'm not at all sure how well this duck is going to look. We're going to call this the duck. And just see how it looks in Unity. It's just a test. I think I'll probably have to redo it from scratch rather than trying to adapt something. Anyway, here is one of the default fenders. And we're just going to duplicate that and drag it up a little bit. Come on, move your ass. Thank you. And we're going to want to move the engine from outside of the middle and replace it with our new mesh, which is a fender, not a friender, a fender duck. Quack. Well, apparently that is where... Oh, that's 000. It's not in the ship for some reason. Whatever. Just roll it back and move it on in. Zoop. So the idea behind this duck is that it will serve to encapsulate something like this welder element, which currently is encapsulated inside of a fender sandwich. But what we would like it to do is slot in underneath the cockpit in a way that looks good. So now if we were to select the welder, we might be able to move the welder into place like this. And you can see that this is not exactly suited for the welder, but they were made at different times for different purposes, so that's not a big surprise. It is, however, fairly easy for us to just adjust this, so we'll do that. Just scale it up a touch. No, stop that. A touch. There we are. And move it into place. And we can move it down a touch. So fundamentally, the problem is that it might be too large. Okay, so if we scale it down some, you can see the other fender object that we were using before. It's hiding in here in a place where it doesn't want to be clicked on. There you are. Come on, asshole. There you are. So I'll just move you away. So what we're trying to get is a feeling like this is just biting into it. And we can do that any way we like, but basically, since they don't have the right material, it's all a little bit silly, but, you know, we'll go ahead and grab some of these materials and try them on for size here. So this is the pale material, and this is the highlight material. And they both would work okay. I think the highlight material suits this a little bit better. And you can see that, at least in theory, minus all of the 3D icons. Can we shrink them? Yeah, look, tiny little icons. Minus all of those icons and the purple lines and all that stuff. which I should also be able to get rid of, but whatever. This is something which is starting to look a little bit like the front of a ship. Now this giant line, this retrieval arm with its extended arm length, isn't normally going to be visible just because it's going to be retracted. So this is more like what it's going to look like. And you can see that the duck is actually way, way more low slung than it needs to be. And I'm thinking that what we'll do is, rather than move this into the lower element, we can move the retrieval arm into it. So if we pull the retrieval arm out of the place it's currently sitting, we might be able to... There we are. We might be able to move it into the same slot, but at the bottom of the duck mouth. Like that. And then we can get rid of some of this extraneous sandwich stuff that we were using before. And then this, we can just forget about it for a second. Now we don't have any of the complex Greeble stuff going on here, but this is already a much tighter situation than it was before in terms of how it looks and how it behaves. This is already a situation where it feels a lot more like a spaceship and a lot less like a hunk of junk. However, we still have the problem with the reverse thrusters, and I'm thinking that because what we've got now is a duck bill sort of thing, we can just slide the reverse thruster in underneath the duck bill and then just kind of say that it is good enough, rather than attempting to have outriders. So we would have it just be like this. And we can mount this however we would like it to be mounted. We could even hide it like this if we want. Or we could even put it inside. There's a lot of things, how we want to mount this is a big part of how it's going to end up looking, but it has no functionality attached to it. It works regardless of exactly how it's mounted. But with this in mind, now what we've got is a situation where the back of the ship needs to have a profile that looks like this, which is an unusual profile, right? It's like a double P or a fat T. And in order to have that kind of profile, we're going to need a mounting solution that has that kind of profile. Another thing we can do is this duck build object is the primary cause for this odd mounting shape. So we could embed some mounting elements into it, which is kind of what I was leading up to. This rear face is not permanent. So let's go ahead and create some rear mounting brackets of some kind, right? And what we'll do is we'll just extrude out like this, and then we will bevel. Do I want to bevel all of them? No, I don't. I just want to bevel the outside like this. Nope. Here we are, bevel. And we'll bevel until they collide like that. See how they collide there? Oop, not there. Those two lines collide, and that makes them into one vert. And so that means that we can just vertex link all of those together. Let's go ahead and see whether or not it's willing to, or whether I have to do it manually. I have to do it manually. That's no biggie. We'll just grab them, and then what is it? Control G, Control. No, W. It's just W. Merge at center. And then again. Merge at center. And now the question is, did this merge? Yeah, that one did. Okay. So now we've got this sort of setup. And what we can do is we can have a little bit of fun with it and just drag this back another notch and then carve a hole in the middle for cutting through. I think we've still got this on. Nope, we don't. Okay. So if we take these elements in the middle here, we can extrude and then shrink them on everything except the x-axis, and that'll give us a notch inside that we can just extrude back and then cut the faces, and we will have a loop like you can see here. Now the problem with this approach is that it is a little bit square, so let's round it off, which we can do just by scaling down on the y-axis like so. And then we'll just grab here. Oh, we don't even want that. We just want this. Here, and again, scale down on the y-axis. Y, please. Oh, Y. If you want the Y-axis, you have to hit Y, as it turns out. This doesn't look quite good enough for our needs, so we're just going to bevel it. There we go. Perfect. Now, this is a very, very sharp edge, so 3 guesses. Yep, bevel it. So what we've got now is this unusual shape because the beveling didn't work quite right. So what we're going to want to do is actually use a manual bevel just by scaling down like this. Because what we've got is, I guess it's not even a problem with the shape, it's a problem with the built-in... yeah, we're going to have to undo all of this because it's a problem with the fundamental curve. Brilliant. Okay, so the problem is that this is a curved element, and we were just kind of not curved. We were just doing it half-assedly. So I guess a better solution for us would be to use some cuts, but cutting a circular element is actually quite hard. There are ways to do it. I don't happen to remember them. So I guess we'll just make a smaller incision, and we'll scale down only on the y-axis like this. Or, even better, just do a double cut, scale up on the y-axis, and then we don't have to do any sort of weird scaling issues, and we can just cut straight across, and there, back to where we were. And we'll scale down on the y-axis. Oh, did I extrude? I didn't mean to. Wait, what's going on here? There, I don't know what happened, but now it's fine. And that gives us a hexagon. And I think that's fine. The hexagons are fine. Another thing we can do is create a manual bevel, where we just grab these elements here and we scale down on everything except for the x-axis. And that'll create a softer bevel. Like that. Anyway, it's just to give us an excuse on how to use this. And we're going to want to fill this in with just a little bit more. That's an interesting setup. Oh, is that? That's just a materials difference. That's fine. We'll repaint the materials in a bit here. And when we do this, we'll just grab these edges and bevel them. Good enough. We've got some materials going on here, so we'll just go and make all of these materials work out. That's heavy hull. We'll make this guy mostly light hull. There we are. So there's our duckbill. If we go back in, you can see that now there is a mounting bracket on the back of the ship. This gives us the opportunity to take some other sorts of approaches. So this is a duckbill. Let's just type it in. And what we can do is we can duplicate the duckbill and flip it like this. Or even, we don't even want to do that. We just want to move it down. Yeah. There's no difficulty in arranging the duckbill to be the engine mount as well. So if we do that, then what we end up with is a sort of double duckbill, where one is larger than the other. Just for the sake of keeping the units fairly sharp, we're going to use a fairly round number here. And this rocket engine, we'll just drop it out and delete this guy. And then we'll just massage this until it feels like it's all in the right place at the right time. Now, this engine is something we're gonna replace at some point. It's not greebled, and the whole point is that we're going to be using greebled engines. So if you take a look at this, we've got a lot of stuff coming out of the back of the duckbill. To be honest, it doesn't look too bad, but if you were actually examining it, you could clearly tell that these are mesh planes clipping. There's always going to be some amount of that when you're doing these half-assed modules, but we'd like to keep it to a minimum. And the way we're going to keep it to a minimum is we're going to redesign the engine to be more greebled. But there are other things we could do to try and fix it, none of which I'm actually going to. But I am going to pull the engine back a touch. There we go. So we ended up with basically the same situation that we had before, except for now our mounting setup is actually kind of interesting in terms of how it looks and how it feels. So rather than just being a blobby P-shape, we now have a series of possible mounting elements. I'm also going to flip this engine 180. Oh, I didn't flip it. Try one more time here. That way the curve of the engine fits a little bit better. Anyway, mounting to this is something where we could use one of our existing brackets, like this thing, which I drew and then I just kind of put together and I didn't really think about it very hard. The basic shape of this element with the cutout is good, but the mounting part where it actually connects is pretty bad. So what we're going to do now is add in a mounting helmet. So we've got two of these guys. We've got the one that's flat, flat hemisphere, and we've got the one that is not. And the question is, which is the one we're looking at here? I think it's the flat one. Yeah. So we'll just go ahead and bring it back. And then we'll put in a mounting element for it. We've already got a nice place for our mounting element up front here. All we have to do is extrude out the parts that we want to be part of our element. And we're going to go ahead and make that these and this. Just extrude straight forward by extruding along the y-axis, like so. Now this is a situation where we have a lot of options as to how we want to build the visual. And I think we're just going to go ahead and create a fake loop, which is going to be done manually by me rather than by extruding another circle, just because that way it will be it'll have a different topology than the actual curve of the circle, and that'll look a little bit more interesting. We're also going to want to have this flipped across a mirror axis, just because it's otherwise going to be an issue. Unfortunately, it looks like we mirrored somewhat badly at some point, and I never bothered to notice or care. So we're going to go and have to fix up our clipping plane just by dragging it into place here. I guess it's fine. No serious damage. And that way I only have to do one side of this. I don't have to do the whole hemisphere. We still have this, so delete that face. And we're going to want to have it, this can be gone too. Nope, not the face, edges. What am I doing here? Come on. Pay attention when you're doing the stuff, would you? Yeah. Okay, so basically we've got an inverse face here, and it's pissing me off. So we're gonna just clean everything up before we do any of this. There we go. So these are no longer needed. We'll just delete them. And then these here are also no longer needed, so we'll delete them. There we go. And then this whole edge can be what we extrude. So just extrude along the y-axis, like so. And that should be fine. We can scale y0 to bring it to a flat element, and then extrude again, like so. And we're going to want to just go ahead and extrude these two faces straight down, and then use a grid fill here. What is it? Control F? Grid fill. No, you can't grid fill that? You jerk. It looks like there's some damage. There is a little bit of damage. Okay, so we're going to clean up this damage a little bit. Try and make it look at least vaguely interesting. There we go. And then we'll just fill. And it's going to have a clumsy face, but since it's convex, I don't care. Or concave, rather. Yeah, since it's convex, I don't care. So we'll just bring this up and then rotate it around the y-axis, and then just massage it until it seems right, just to give it a different appearance than the topology of the basic element. And then we'll delete those faces. Now, I wasn't sure whether or not I wanted that sort of weird divot. I think I want it going the other way. Yeah, so we're going to bring this down to like flat and then bring this into a divot shape. So we'll just grab everything here and then ungrab these elements. Divot. There we go. So we have a couple of things that haven't been correctly faced, or whatever you want to call it, right? These are not yet properly extruded and capped. So that's what we're going to do. We're just going to extrude and then bring it straight down. And then fill that, and then fill this. I guess we have to extrude across first. Whoop. And now fill it. There we go. So this mounting bracket is a little bit not good enough. Maybe if I round the front, it'll look better. Something about this feels really dumb, feels really bad. I might have to think again about this basic idea, because it doesn't seem like it is feeling right. It feels like it feels a little bit stupid. Well, let's try it. Let's see how it looks. So this is how it looks. Obviously there's no texturing, but... Oh, of course it doesn't fit, because I actually didn't put the right kind of mounting bracket. But if we bring this down to a more reasonable size, that's not 1.5. There we are. We could mount this in a way that doesn't feel too stupid, just to see how it looks. So you can see how that creates some greebling, some striping, just by layering them. I'm not sure that their sizes match up very well, but that's something that I can massage right now and I'll just deal with. But as you can see, if we can get the ship to come back out of that sort of mount, I think it feels okay. Now, the way that it bonds here is pretty suspect. That's pretty clearly a situation where there's a couple of mesh faces cutting against each other. And the problem with that is that this front face, after I decided to pull it out to make it more rounded, turns out that was a shitty idea, because it needs to be flat in order for the planes to not look like they are just total crap. So to do that, we'll select a plane here, and then we'll just, scale-wise 0, bring it all back into alignment. And that'll keep it from looking like the planes are cutting through each other, since that's the big problem with these kinds of modules. Now if we take this duckbill and we flip it, and then we bring it back, and we move it on up, like this. Trying to figure out how to make this feel right, but the problem is I'm using a fake engine at the moment. I'm using a temporary engine, so it doesn't really have the right feel. But just to test it out, we can try it on and see how it feels when I actually butt it up here. So the question is, do I want the mounting bracket to slot above the engine or below the engine? Well, again, these planes are pretty obviously planar cuts that don't make sense. So if you look, this is the engine and this is the duckbill. The duckbill is actually what's responsible for this really, really white area, I think. No, that's the engine. So both the duckbill and the engine have just stark white elements, but that's not actually how they look in play mode. In play mode, they are much less stupid. The problem is that right now play mode is hard to get to, just because the camera that we normally use isn't here. We're gonna go ahead and just fake it for a second. Black backdrop, and we'll just move this camera into position. Where is it? Oh, that's right, I turned off the 3D icon, so... Oh, it's way the heck over there. No, that must be scaling. Move. Nope, move. You know what? Drop it inside the player ship. And then, there you go. Brilliant. Oh, that wasn't what I wanted to do. Spin and move and bring it down and tilt it back. So in the game, the lights that you're currently seeing coming out of the engine wouldn't actually be fully on unless you were actively braking. It looks like there's a lot of stuff that's not actually in the ship, but there's obviously some... This is not really set up to be the way it is, but a lot of this stuff has been removed from the ship as I was meddling. Drop it back into the ship. Try one more time, just to see if I can get the... There we are. That's what it really looks like when you hit play, aside from this lolling tongue that we've got here. But if we move this camera a little bit... Oh, okay, when it's paused it doesn't like to move? Huh. Oh, that's a directional light, not a camera. I see that you are just foolish. I'm not sure what happened to the camera. I moved it, I guess. I must have mounted it to the ship, because that's what you do. That's what the ship normally does. But if we were to move this around a little bit further, just to take a look at the bottom, I really want to see how this looks, because it either looks like a mess or it looks decent, and I don't know which... I think it probably looks like a mess. Yeah. So the issue here is that the sweep of the duckbill is obviously cutting into the engine, and that's just not going to cut it. So this engine is unsuitable for this particular setup. But I wanted to try to build an alternate ship with a different sort of setup. And one of the issues is simply that the elements are not the right ones, and I'm going to need to build new elements with different kinds of greebling and different kinds of stuff like that. Also, this mount is just much too large, so what we're going to do is we're going to scale this way down, because that's the easiest thing to do. And we're going to want to, there we are, scale this down around its 3D, nope, around the 3D cursor, it's not in the middle, is it? Okay, so hold on. Alt-G, there we are, and then Alt-C, and then minus, and scale to 3D cursor, scale not on the y-axis, and you can see how that shrinks way down. And that sort of tighter approach, come on, that sort of tighter approach might make it a little bit easier to work with. We're also able to massage a couple of things that we weren't going to massage before. So let's go ahead and do that. So just bring this in, and then we'll cut here and bring this in. And then we'll cut here and bring this in. And that'll give us a nice slide. See that? Alright, so now we're going to just go and unzip this just to get us an arbitrary feel. We don't have any materials hooked up to it right now, so this is going to be hull, and we're also going to want some heavy hull. And as you might guess, most of the interior and edge is going to be heavy hull. Not these guys. And then in here, we're also going to have heavy hull. Perfect. Alright, so we'll save that and then pop on into here and see what we've got. Alright, so you can see how much smaller that mount is now. And that's good because the engine is actually going to be quite big. So it makes a lot more sense for us to have it swell rather than stay the same size. But it looks like I forgot to assign that second material. So we're going to do that now. So just drop hull here and then heavy hull into the second slot. Oh, there's no second slot. There we are. And then heavy hull into the second slot. An alternative is that instead of heavy hull, that doesn't look like heavy hull. I think I dragged glass in. Instead of heavy hull, we could use highlight to keep it blue. I think that's probably a good idea. And then we can have this be hull. And then with something that large, we can make this engine the scale that it's supposed to be, which is like 1.6 or 1.7. And it should still slot in relatively fine. Like so. And then we can just grab these wings and pull them in and slot them in too. Like so. Now we have no greebled elements right now, and that's definitely going to have to change. The engine is also too far forward, so pull it back. And this needs to be moved. That's going to be replaced by something else entirely. But as far as a spaceship goes, I think you can start to see what I'm trying to get out of the front of the ship. There are still some details that need to be massaged. This duckbill, for example, isn't working, so it's going to have to be changed out for something else. And some other details like that that need to be worked with. But this kind of flow where it goes, that's what I'm aiming to get out of this ship. And I don't think that a perfectly round element is what I want. I think that I actually need to create some flattened divots. So let's go ahead and do exactly that. If we grab these elements, we can try and flatten them down. Now the problem is that there is no specific way to flatten these kinds of elements in this sort of situation. We could rotate the whole thing 45 degrees. That looks like 45, and then scale Z0. And that's the only way I know of how to do this reasonably easily. I'm sure there are other methods, but, you know, we don't even want to scale Z0. I'm trying to figure out the actual scaling involved here. It might be that each of these rows gets scale Z0'd on its own. Let's try that out. So, scale Z0, scale Z0, scale Z0, scale Z0. So now the only problem is that these here no longer quite fit into what it's supposed to look like. So we're just going to grab all of them and drag them a little bit until they do. And then we've got a nice crisp edge there. But I don't think that's the angle I actually want it to be at, so we're going to undo all of that. And instead of 45 degrees, so we're going to want to have it at like 15. And then we can do a lot better scaling. So we'll just grab all of this, scale Z0. And you can see how that creates a much, much sharper flatness. And I guess what we're going to need to do, it's not quite enough, is it? So one more. There we are. I guess what we're going to need to do is switch over to point and switch over to active element. And that way, when we scale Z0, it won't arbitrarily create two creases. It'll only create one, because it'll be scaling towards the active element rather than the middle. That's a little better, but It's clear that we need to do a little bit more massaging because of the way that these bend in an interesting and way which we didn't really intend. So what we're going to do is undo back up to here. And then with these guys, we're just going to go ahead and select the whole set of units. And then scale Z gently until they match. Drag them down just a touch. Oh, not that one. And this guy gets dragged down. I'm not actually sure that this is a good way to do it. I may be wasting everybody's time here. No, I don't think it's going to work. So undo, and we'll try one more thing here. We'll just try extruding and flattening. Probably should have just alt-clicked. Whatever, it's fine. So if we extrude up on the z-axis like this, we can scale down on the z-axis and then keep moving it until it creates a nice flared feel, like that. That is what I want. Good. Thank you very much. That's perfect. We're going to want to do one more thing, and that is set this to be heavy hull, just to give us a nice stripe. And save it. And we'll go back over here and see how that looks in comparison. Yeah. So you can see how that gives us a lot more vertical spread, which may not be what we want. But more importantly, it gives us something that's not so spherical, because that hemisphere looked really hemispherical. That said, that's pretty tall. I guess it's fine. I'll go back and modify it again if I need to. It's hard to tell exactly how much I'm going to need without creating the secondary object, the engine, which obviously we'll do in a moment here. So if we were to spin one of these sideways and mount it, I'm just trying to get a feel for if these can be used to merge the whole system, the whole structure together. So when you look at the edges, the question is whether or not these feel overly forced. And I'm actually not sure. If they're dark, they're probably fine. But if they were brightly lit, it'd be very, very obvious that there's something stupid happening. So there's a real question as to where the trade-off is between compatibility and usability, because obviously we can't make it so that everything can slot into everything at every angle. It's just physically not feasible. But another option is we could flip it. Try that again. Come on. Come on. Come on. Stop. God damn it. Unity's widget is great, this widget here, except that scaling has ultimate priority over every other thing you could ever possibly click on. So it's like, okay, can I move this? No, you wanted to scale it, right? Can I rotate it? No, you wanted to scale it. Come on, I didn't want to scale it. Now I want to scale it. There we are. That sort of setup isn't so bad, but the way in which it merges together, which is clearly a mesh face, just cutting through another mesh face, is not so great. Still, structurally, that's not too bad. Yeah, we'll go ahead and leave it like that for now. Oh, it's already past 3. Time flies, I guess. I got a whole bunch of notifications. Oh, people are just talking about a stupid joke I made. Great. So what we've got here is this heavy mount up near the top. And if we wanted to be more accurate, the whole mount element would probably be lower. But what we've done is we use this duckbill to come up. And then we've got another element here that reverses. Well, you know what we should do? We should probably work on the engine element. So we're going to just grab this entire thing and save this as greebalized. And we're not going to need any of these in this, so we're just going to delete them all. So if we're going to create a greebalized engine, we have to recognize what kind of engine we're using. And I believe that this is the rocket engine. Let's just take a close look at the back here. Yes, that is really very clear. Yeah, it's the rocket engine. So what we need to do is come up with a greebled version of this. And I think that one of the basic steps is we're going to have a couple of distinct nozzles, but our configuration for our nozzles is going to be different than what you might have noticed, because in the version in the game world, they're arranged fairly flat. If you take a look, you can see that they are just a plane of nozzles. And that's actually going to work against us if we want to greeble things. So we're going to go ahead and create some fun offset nozzles. Of course, in order to do that, we have to create some nozzles in the first place. So we'll just extrude. No, it didn't work. I don't know what was going on. And then we're going to shrink this down to half. There we are. And then we'll shrink the whole thing down to half, but not on the y-axis. There we are. A nozzle. Hooray. Extrude, and that's not correct. And then we'll grid fill. Boom. Didn't do so well that time. It decided that it was going to do it at a weird angle. Let's go ahead and see whether or not we can force it to do it at the right angle. So, no. Well, we'll just fill it. We'll leave it for now. Now, these are very, very flat and basic nozzles. We could make them more complicated, and I guess that's probably not a bad idea. So to do that, we're going to go ahead and cut. So even though I just did all of that stuff, it's going to go away. But what can you do? And then we'll add in just a set of modifiers, like so. And then once again, we're going to go and make this work. This time we'll just extrude down. Oh, I turned off clipping. And then again, extrude down. There we are. We don't have a material for these guys, I don't think, but we could easily make them out of anything we would like. We're going to use heavy hull, and then on the interior, we're going to make it red. Now, to make this look better, what we're going to want to do is add in some vector arrays that look fun and easy. So for that, what we're going to want to do is simply grab a bunch of this stuff. But as you can see, that would be extruding along 2 axes. So we're going to rotate this whole thing by 45 degrees. And that way, we only have to extrude along the x-axis, which is much nicer. So we'll just duplicate and then pull it out. And then we'll extrude. And what we'll want to do is actually make this a completely different sort of feel. And the way to do that is to bloat this set here along the z-axis, and then here, like that, yeah. And that's fine. Let's pull this out. There we go. And now what we're going to want to do is make this have an extension, and then just extrude. There we go. Even that's not quite right. That's fine though. And that's going to be our basic engine setup, as you can see. What we're going to want to do here is add in one more material for our nice shiny hull and make that just this exterior element so that we do have some nice greebling built right into this system. Now we're going to want to set everything to smooth and then auto smooth it so we get a nice setup. The last thing is I don't like the way that this face looks. So to make it look a little bit less flat, we're just going to grab this and move it like that. That ought to give it a little bit of noise. We'll cut here and then we'll bevel the cut like so. And then we'll extrude that out like so. And that way it will feel a little bit less flat. There we go. So that's going to be one of our nozzles. Now the key to this is that we're not going to have just one nozzle. We're going to have lots of nozzles. So let's go ahead and unrotate it. And then we'll duplicate the nozzle. And we can move the nozzle off to the side and anywhere we would like in order to get it to be more greebled. But the key to this setup is we're going to want to rotate it. So I'm going to delete this. And then I'm going to grab this, move it, and then we're going to apply its location so that we can rotate it around its base. And then when we duplicate it and we rotate it out like this, we don't have any problems with it rotating in a weird way. But you can see how if we do this, that's going to end up just fine. So we're going to go ahead and apply that location. Oops. I guess we have to apply the mirror first. Then we're going to apply the location. Then we're going to duplicate and rotate Y180. And then we're going to combine those. No, not P. What is it? L? No, the J? J. Duplicate and rotate around the Y-axis 90. And there you can see that we have a full-fledged set of rear engine elements that can be vectored in a lot of different ways. And you might be thinking, okay, that looks ridiculous. And yeah, that's the point. So how is the rest of the engine going to look? Well, we're going to want to have a lot more great stuff built in like this. And what you see here is we've got this engine where we've got all of these engine elements merged into one object. And the key to this is that we actually want to rotate this and then cut 3 of them, even though we just spent a whole bunch of time making it work, right? Well, don't worry about it. Cut it, and then we can add in a mirror modifier to make up for the mirror modifier that we left behind. But you can see that it is not correctly handling the correct axes. And that's because it's... Why is that? That's the center, so why is it flipping in a weird way? Is this like rotation? Ah, there we are. It was just me being stupid. There we are. So now that we've got it rotated, we can either put it back or leave it like this. And to be honest, I think this looks better. So we'll leave it like this. But because we've got this now set up as a mirrored set of objects, we can easily create cables coming out of it to merge into a core object. We're going to go ahead and rotate it for temporarily just so that we can work across on one axis to get our cables to work right. And we could create cables as a separate object, but I don't think there's any big reason to do that. So we'll just grab this. Oh, that's probably too many. Yeah, we'll go ahead and create a new object for it. We'll add in a circle with only 6 sides. Come on. It's being fussy. There we are. And now this isn't... I still haven't really learned how to do this in Blender in a way that doesn't suck. Or I would show you how to do it, but unfortunately, I don't know. So we're just going to do it the sucky way, which is to Control-click. So we'll start with an extrude. Wow, this is not working. Extrude. Oh, there's no faces. That's why. There we are. So once you've extruded, you can Control-click to continue extruding. And you can see that right now we are inverted. We'll just flip it. And that's a little bit big, so we'll shrink it and pull it in. And then we will continue our clicking. And then we're going to go ahead and scale up this next part on not the x-axis, like so. And that's going to just be a turbocharger. And then we will bring it in. And then here, bevel. And then the whole thing. Scale up. There we are. We've got a little bit of extra grease here, so let's grab these and bring them in. There we go. Robotic Sarcasm says, it looks perfectly ridiculous and high. Sugar Satellite says, finally managed to catch you live again. Nice to see all the progress you've made on the project. Not sure how much progress I've made. I don't really work very hard on it. It's literally just the streams. So I feel a little bit guilty for how slow I work, but if it's fast enough for you, that's good enough for me. It's the problem with being a hobbyist. You have other things in your life that matter substantially more. So that's going to be some basic cabling, but we're also going to want to put in some heavy, what do you want to call them? Those things, the lever connectors here. So we'll just extrude and then shrink on local axis like this, and then we will just bring it up. And then once again, we can click to bring it back. Like so. And to make these into something that, ooh, that's not exactly how I intended it to go. We'll go ahead and try and fix this by using some scaling on the z-axis. Okay, so we'll just grab here and then Control plus scale Z. There we are. That's a little bit better. And then we're going to want to give it a little bit of personality. So let's grab here and bevel. And then we will turn this into some kind of engine nub, or, you know, rotary nub, like that. And then bevel. Oh, that didn't work. And then here and here. Sorry, having a hard time with my mouse right now because I am an idiot, but it happens. And then we'll just local extrude. And then bevel. And then lastly, we're going to just take these and ram them into the original frame again. It's a little twisted, though. Well, you know what? I'm okay with that for the moment. We can fix it later if we have to fix it. But the point is that we want the end of the engine to be ultra greebled. That is the greeblest. So with that in mind, we're going to go ahead and create another circle. And this is going to be the main engine casement. And I guess 32 is probably not enough. I'll go up to 64 for this bad boy. And then we'll go inside and rotate like this. Bring it back, scale it up. Let's go ahead and extrude before we scale it up. Whoop. So you can see how this can easily end up coming out past the edges of our engines. That's actually not what we want in this case, because the whole point here is that we have some engines that are super greebled, and what we would like to have happen is we would like for that to continue. So in order to make that happen, we're going to want this to be inside of the engines rather than outside of the engines. But we do want to match up to the engine's basic shape in order to show that we're paying attention. So in order to do that, we are going to end up cutting a lot of this and then extruding in 4 different directions. But rather than cutting, we're just going to go ahead and, I guess cutting would still be easier after all. So we're going to go ahead and cut. Oh, it's not on the... Oh, it is. Okay. For a second, I thought it wasn't on the... No, it isn't. Wait. It looks like we're not square on the axis. I think that I gave it the wrong number of elements. So we'll try one more time here. Create a circle. 64 is obviously not right. 32 is fine. 64 wasn't. That's interesting. I don't know what happened. Well, whatever. We'll go ahead and delete these guys, and then we'll add in that mirror modifier. It's just a standard X. We've got some extra stuff here, don't we? Delete that. Extrude back so we can see what the heck we're doing. Thank you. Flip that direction. And now, as before, we're going to want to rotate it 45 degrees. That way we can work with just one axis rather than 2, and it's a lot easier to work with. And what we'll do is we'll grab these, and we will... Do we want to extrude them or move them? Well, let's start with extruding. Like that. And then we'll just apply the mirroring, and then apply the rotation, and then we'll go in here, and we can scale the whole thing up. And you can sort of see what I'm trying to do, although it is a little bit insufficient at present. That's fine. For now, it's okay to be insufficient. We can come back into it later with some more aggressive elements. But for now, let's grab this whole set here. That mesh looks mean as hell, so many sticky outy bits. Welcome to Greebling. So we're just going to drag this forward, and then extrude down, and then this is going to just butt straight into the ass of this rear engine tube. And now this has a lot of extra density in places where nobody's ever going to see it, which is obviously not ideal, but on the other hand, it doesn't really matter as much as you might think once we do some level of detail assignments. Just for the sake of how it is right now, I think it's probably okay. What we have is these grips here didn't end up working out, so we're going to go back into the other mesh, and these grips, we're going to have to rebuild them. They're not working, so just delete them like this, and then refill these with Control F grid fill. Yeah, good. And then we're going to want to UV unwrap it. And I think we'll just go with a straight up Y-axis grip. So extrude out on the Y-axis only. And then we can scale it on the X-axis. I guess what we really want to do is scale it on the Y-axis again. But pull it up. And scale it on the X-axis. No? I don't like it. Undo. So what we're actually going to do is take this guy and duplicate him a whole bunch. So, hooray, right? Let's just go ahead and do a rear mount straight up. Because we're going to have to do one anyway, so we might as well do it now. So you can see that the issue with this rear mount is that it hits the edge of a curve element on the core mesh here, and that's going to end up with a really, really ugly set of faces. Well, the easiest way to deal with that is to manipulate this guy so that it matches up, and I think the easiest way to do that is to just massage these faces. So we're going to grab the 8 that we need to grab. I guess it's more than 8. And then we're going to scale them up on everything except for the Y-axis. And that you can see how we get this setup here. The only problem is that we were scaling them up local to themselves rather than local to the medium point. So if we do this, okay, that's also not going to work. So I guess we do want to do it from the local point, but we want to select all these faces here. That's better. Now the mount is still very, very iffy, and we're going to need to massage the actual mesh involved in order to get this to be a little bit less crap. But it's probably going to be crap forever, or until I do another set of modeling, because it's not a high priority, and unfortunately that means that it's not going to get done. I guess the other thing I can do is try and pull these edges until they perfectly match the curve of the mount. No, don't undo there. Undo this guy. I want to... What a pain in the butt. Let's do it one more time. And basically, we're just going to try and make it fit via scaling it properly, right? It's still not going to look right because the mesh here doesn't actually have a flat y coordinate. As far as I know. Is that correct? Or does it? No, it doesn't. So if we scale it down on the y-axis like this, now it should be lined up. It still doesn't look great. Whatever. Good enough for now. Let's go ahead and set this up with a little bit more work. And we're going to want to make this greebled mess a proper greebling. And that means that we're going to want to have some stuff going on. And the first thing we're going to want to do is cap off all of these sub-elements. So we'll just cap Sorry, I'm thinking about this as I'm doing it, and I think I only want to cap off one quad rather than... As you might be able to guess, I am literally just feeling things out. I'm just kind of half-assing exactly how it's going to feel, with the result being hopefully fun, but maybe not. We'll know in a minute here. But with this in mind, we're going to want to be a little bit more aggressive with our greebles out here. And to do that, we're going to cut some vents into this element. We're going to just go to the individual origins, and then we'll scale it down on a y-axis like this, and then we'll extrude in like so. Now to create vents, we have a couple of options, but by far the easiest one is to grab this mesh here, or this mesh here. Either one will do. And then just duplicate it a whole bunch. The only problem with this is that we don't have a full beam mesh. We've only got a half beam. So after we've duplicated it once and moved it, we're left with a gap, a missing face. See that? What we'll probably want to do is only grab the element here, and then we'll extrude down the faces when we're done. So duplicate, and then duplicate, and then duplicate, and then duplicate, and then duplicate, like so. And then we can just do a select similar, if I can remember how. Select I can't remember how to do this. Is it a control something? Control S? No, that's save. Might as well do it though. Alt F? No, that's faces. What is the select menu? W? Control right click? No. I can't remember how to pull up the full select menu, so all I've got is this, which doesn't... Oh, Shift G. Yep, there it is. Thank you. So area, and then you can see how that gets all of them. And the problem with this is it's going to extrude in a couple of things we don't want. So what we're going to do is deselect here. And then if we extrude in, you can see how we end up with some flaws or some errors or something screwy going on. If we extrude out, oh wait, hold on, we've still got some extra fluff. My bad. And thanks to Elbow-Etchy for actually knowing how Blender works. As you may have guessed, I am not terribly enamored of it and don't really know it as well as I might. So if we pull this down, we end up with a problem. Not only are these inverted in terms of their normals, but what we have to do is delete all of these interior faces and then grab all of these inverted objects and uninvert them. But the problem is that it's really hard to do that with this setup. So what we're going to do is first we're going to select everything. I'm going to flip direction, and then we're going to try and minus, but you can see how the minus doesn't work. How annoying, right? There are lots of ways that we could try to select the various faces that we'd like to get rid of. But actually the easiest thing for us in this case is to not extrude like that, and to instead only extrude the outer edge. Unfortunately, I am not 100% sure how to deselect the inner beam for each of these without just manually doing it. And in fact, what we need to do is only select these. So let's go ahead and try that one more time. There are still some things to deselect, but hopefully it should work out. A lot of manual selection here because Blender's auto-select utilities aren't really as good as Maya's. So you've got to do a lot of annoying stuff manually unless you know how to do it better, which I don't. So if we then hit Z just to make sure, yep, it's just these elements that have been grabbed. So we can extrude them, but you can see how it just kind of extrudes at random. So we're going to want to have this go towards the median point, and then we'll extrude. And then we'll just scale them down, not on the y-axis. And you can see how that just cuts straight into the engine. And that's it. That's all we needed to do. The last thing we want to do is use Control+ to select all of their sides, and then set them up as having a different material, a heavy hull. And this will be hull. And that way they'll actually have a visible difference from the rest of the thing. And what we're going to want to do is the interiors are also going to be assigned to heavy hull, so we'll just grab them. Boom. There we are. Now we've got some vents. Hooray! That took a lot of extra work, didn't it? Sorry about that. So what we're going to want to do is extrude here, but then smooth. So we'll just grab this tool set and hit Smooth Vert. And you can see that that gives us a steadily more circular arrangement, and that's really what we want for the next phase of our mount. So we'll just bring it forward like this, and then we'll just cap it off with a rounded surface. It's not going to be perfectly rounded though. We're going to want to have some flatness to it. And so we're going to grab the edges, boom, 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 and scale them down, not on the y-axis. Then we can cap this off, and we could create some more greebling here, but I think that it's probably okay as is, and that's going to be our engine element. And we might add in a fuel element in front of it, and that will also be fun and greebled. So there are still some elements to this engine element that I am not so elementy about, and that's going to be these guys. So we'll just grab these and then extrude down and then extrude in, and that'll give us a little bit more of a noticeable setup there. We're also going to want this to be hull, and then this to be vent, and then this to be heavy hull. And we'll go ahead and bring it in so that it feels like it fits a little bit more nicely into the current arrangement, like so. Boom. That's not too bad, is it? So with this in mind, we do have to finish applying some mirror modifiers, and then we're going to merge everything together. Boom. And that's going to be our new rocket engine. We're going to call this the Greebled rocket engine. Dun dun dun. We're also going to go ahead and create a box. The reason for that is because otherwise Unity will interpret the Blender file incorrectly. So... Alboecha says stream compression is real. I'm sure it is, but I'm not sure what he's talking about. So let's go ahead and see how this looks in our newest setup here with our greeblized engine. Move it into place. Yep. Now we obviously don't need the box. We just need the engine, so we'll grab it, move it in here. Yep, goodbye. And then this, if we slot this into the back of the existing engine, just to kind of get an idea of how it might look. That's roughly how the back of the ship will look, and you can see just how greebled that is. It's much more intense than the existing greebling. It's also got the wrong heavy hull because it's got the interior here. So we're going to go ahead and grab the elements that we need from elsewhere. So there's our hull. There's our heavy hull. There it is. And then we're going to want to have our venting. So if we hit play, and we look at it from inside of the game, I'm going to move the camera a little bit here. Hey there, cameraman. Doop, 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 doop. Now the lighting is not in the right spot, so we've got some glow that we won't normally have. It's not normally going to look like the whole engine is on fire, but we're just kind of inheriting the lighting that exists for the other engine at the moment, and it's not in the right spot. But you can see how that's quite a bit more greebled. At the moment, it doesn't appear that it has a very good UV map. I think I forgot to unwrap it. Well, it's fine. Alboecha says that Blender looked like crap while I was using it. I can believe you. So that's going to be our rear engine. Now the only question is whether or not it's better like this, or whether it would be better to have a flatter arrangement that's not quite so round. Now we've got a round mount, but I don't like pure roundness. Purely spherical things are a little bit weird. So normally I would be against them. But in this case, we're likely to have several bundles of these side by side, something offset like this, for example. And because of that, it's okay to have two of these set up with different, set up with both of them round, because they're going to be next to each other, and that's not going to be round. That's going to be square, right? Because that's two sets of engines next to each other. So because of that, I'm okay with the roundness in this case. But the things they mount into, probably a fuel tank, aren't going to be round. They're going to have rounded elements, but they're going to be greebled fuel. And I guess I could do that. Or I could stop for the day because my voice is going. I recorded a tutorial about how to model faces and blew my voice out. Brilliant, right? It's only been an hour, and it's on the weekend. I'll go for a little bit longer. We'll try and model our other setup here. So, in order to create the greebled fuel tank, we have to understand what kind of what fuel tanks look like when they're greebled. Fuel tanks are fundamentally best when they're round, because round is the most durable shape to resist compressive forces. So a greebled fuel tank should still have round elements in it. It just won't be round when you look at it. And the easiest way to do that is to have a core fuel element and then some exterior add-on elements. So for that, we'll just do this, and then we will duplicate this and move it, and then we will shrink it on most axes, and then shrink it on one axis, and then move it like so. And then we'll cut and mirror. Nope. Yes. Mirror. There we are. And with this sort of setup, we will have a much easier time creating something that feels non-round, but still has convincingly round elements in it, because it's a fuel tank and they should be round, right? There we go. So what we're going to want to do is start to create some crispness to the way that these things work. And that's going to be taking these and making them less round, for starters. Got clipping turned on. There we are. Again, we don't want to scale it on every axis, just on a couple of axes. So if we were to do this, I think it might be easiest if we just turn on connected proportional editing and then scale them down on one axis like this. And then turn off that, and then we'll move in like that. And now this whole thing is a little bit too big, so we're going to scale it down on the y-axis so that it fits inside of the tank. But we're not going to want to have a symmetrical tank, so we're going to pull it back so that there's some area up front. Or we could do it the other way around, but you know, either way works when you actually put it in the ship. And then we'll take this and we will extrude it down and fill. Extrude it down and fill. And we're going to want to have some stuff going on there that's not just that, but we'll get to it later on. This we will just do ahead and extrude out and shrink and fill. And then this will extrude out and shrink and fill. There we go. We're going to want to have a bunch of elements here that make this more greebled than it currently is, because this is just a generic set of tubes right now. It's not greebled enough to have the greebling mean anything. It's not going to count towards the greeble at the moment, but we're going to go ahead and scale this up, maybe 1.5. That looks like it's a little bit big. Scale 1.25. Yeah, that's right. Once again, we will smooth and auto-smooth. There we are. So in order to create more greebled elements, we have to decide what we're going to do. And the most common way to add greebling to fuel tanks is to add pipes, which we can do. It's not very hard. So we'll just go ahead and do that for starters. That's 3. That's 6. And as before, we'll want to shrink this down and then turn off clipping so we can move it around. And then what we can do is just control click until it is a pipe, right? But you can see what we've got here is some overlap. So first off, it's a little too big, and second off, it's not in the right place. So now let's try that one more time. There we go. And we're going to want to flip that. Now, the real problem with this particular approach is that the pipes don't really merge very well into the surfaces of these places. Instead, what you're left with is obvious planar clipping. So in order to deal with that, we're going to want to be a little bit more careful. And what we're going to do is try and extrude into a position where we can then create a mounting bracket. And then use the mounting bracket. And the best thing about this is that you can then modify the mounting bracket independently like that. Yeah, that's fine. Now this is also something that needs to be smooth, so we'll just hit that, smooth. But you can see how it's got too few faces for the auto smooth to work. We have two options. We can either create more faces, or we can change the auto smooth setting until it works. And that looks decent enough. I'm okay with them having sharp creases, but I'm not okay with them having folds. Anyway, we can continue to create chords like this all we would like, but I think what we need is a generic cable that we can duplicate. So we'll just go ahead and do that right now. Shrink this down and then move it over here and up. And what we're going to do is create a forward line of motion like this, and that's not quite what I wanted to do, so we're going to undo it and then try again. Wow, that ended up really flat. That's a little better. Obviously we're going to want to flip it. And then we're going to turn on connected proportional editing and move this cable so that it feels correct, like so. We're going to want to just massage it a little bit, and then turn off proportional editing and create some mounting elements. And that means deleting this piece down here, I think. Come on, there we are. And this we can turn into a mounting element. Good enough. And then this. Good enough. Right. So then we can just grab this whole thing and duplicate it a couple of times. Just slot it back like a turbocharger in a V8, right? And now obviously that's silly. It doesn't make any sense, but it's Greebles. And now we want to have one last greebling mess in the back here, and the easiest way that we want to do that is we're going to go ahead and create a whole mounting element that runs like shoof wow, right? So to do that, we're going to need to create a circle and do some work with it. Right now we have a thing that's mirrored on several sides, so this circle is going to be a little bit silly, but that should be okay. We can always delete most of the circle once we're done. So this is the circle, but obviously it's way too circular. So we're going to just go ahead and shape it a little bit. Oh, I'm getting real hungry, which is a shame because I don't have anything to eat. There we go. And it's a little bit too tight, as you can see, so we're going to grab the whole thing and just scale it up on the z-axis a touch until it's large enough to get across that cap. There we are. And then we'll just grab these edges. Yep, that's them. Scale them down. Boom. And now we'll extrude. Oh, that didn't work. And we'll extrude again, scaling up on everything except for the y-axis. And you can see how that ends up creating an inverted surface. So we'll flip the surface. Boom. Still too far back, so we'll move it forward. And now we'll start with our mounting element. And that's going to be pretty straightforward. But it's time for us to delete most of this guy. So let's go ahead and move him just a little bit until we can grab the pieces that we want to delete. And we're going to go ahead and delete alternate elements so that it is actually in a different spot than the rest, just because that's fairly straightforward. So we're going to go ahead and delete these. Not you. There we are. And while we're here, we might as well delete this interior face. I guess it's fine. Well, no, I don't want to delete it. We'll get rid of that interior face. And then we'll grab this whole thing and move it forward again. There we are. And you can see how that's just a different sector, so it's a little bit easier to edit without getting in the way, right? So with that in mind, let's go ahead and do this. So we'll extrude forward like this. And what we're going to want to do is have this be... oh, I turned off... Hold on. I turned off clipping, which gave us an unusual shape, which was not what I wanted. There we are. But we're going to want to have this be a little bit more interesting than that. So what we're going to do is actually this. So long as it doesn't have... Did I accidentally... No, it's fine. Actually, that would be fine too, but we'll do it this way first. And then we'll just grab this one edge and pull it forward, and that'll create our mounting element. And as you can see, it's got an unusual set of curves to it, so we'll go ahead and tell it not to. And then what we'll want is, on this side, something similar. So we'll extrude slightly and then pull this forward. There we go. Dotbow says, glad to see your stream after such a long time. Welcome. And David Godar says, amazing workflow. I do not know how to 3D model professionally, so do not take my workflow as advice. I'm happy if you learn something from me, but I am pretty much winging it, so be aware, you know? So the only issue we've got right now is that this element here is actually tipped, as you can see, and we don't want it to be tipped like that. So what we're going to do is just massage this one particular line until it is tipped the opposite direction. And then when we extrude that, it won't be tipped wrong. There we go. And then we're going to create a couple of small bolts. So to create a bolt, we're going to duplicate this, turn clipping off for a minute, shrink it, and turn clipping back on. And then we're just going to go ahead and bevel this square. But unfortunately, I don't know if that's going to work. Can we... Okay, so apparently it doesn't like to bevel just raw elements. So we're going to go ahead and extrude it and then bevel. And that will create... we only want the sides, so let's just grab the sides here. That was annoying. Just bevel these sides, and I am not doing well with this. This one, this one, this one, and this one. Thank you, bevel. And this is just going to be a bolt that holds the whole thing together. Or a set of bolts, I guess, and we'll just extrude that straight down. Now that's obviously a very high density visual element there in terms of when you're far away, do you really want to waste that many faces? But that's fine for us. We're going to be doing some pretty heavy LOD work. But as you can see, what we've got now is a pretty cool greebled fuel mount. I think that everybody can agree that that would be an interesting thing to see on a ship. But this front cap is no good. So we're going to go ahead and have this front cap be something a little bit more special. The rear cap is also a little bit different. Yep. Genuine Cried says Space V8. That is exactly what I was going for. It is fine if things are pulpy. That's just fine. So we're just going to go and have a tip. Oh, we don't want this couple of extra things here. There we are. Bevel. Just going to put a tip on that side, and then over here we're going to move this guy back, and we're going to do the similar thing for this, because otherwise it will look really bad. So we'll shrink it down, move it in, and then out, and then bevel. There we go. So you can see that that's actually not a very good bevel job because it interferes with the engine's size. So that's not a big deal. All we'll do is select all of them on both sides. And then we're going to scale them down on everything but the y-axis. And then we're going to move them down. And there we go. Now they exist, but they're no longer going to be making any problems when you slide the engine in. Control-Alt-Left mouse button equals ring selection. I think I've been using that. Control-Alt-Left? Yeah, that's the standard. How is that different from just Alt-Left? Anyway, bevel. Perfect. So that's going to be our space engine, our space fuel tank. We're going to need to do some UV unwrapping, and let's give it a couple of materials just for blocking out its purposes. We're going to have hull, we're going to have heavy hull, and we're going to have warning. Because when you have a fuel tank, warning is a good thing to have, right? So in terms of what sort of things we're going to have warning on, I'm thinking all of these guys. So we'll just select all of them like this, and then we'll hit minus, minus. It's not going to let me minus them away? Okay, fine. So we'll just do it like this. Plus. And then we'll have that be the warning. We're also going to have the warning be on the tip here, and here, and here, and here, and here, and here. Warning. Lots of warnings. And then for the heavy hull elements, it's going to be largely the mounting elements. So these, and then this, and this, and this. The heavy hull here in our Blender file is not very dark, so we're going to darken it up so we can see it more clearly. I'd also like these to be heavy hull elements, so we'll go ahead and select them. And then not having a good time selecting them. There it is. Wow, I am so used to other programs now that Blender, it feels really alien just to move the camera around. Boom. So these are really, really obviously hexagonal, and we may have to change that later on. Just to take a quick look, what would it look like if we did a subdivision surface? So definitely some places that Blender doesn't do so well with the subdivision surface. What happens if we were to do it with a bevel modifier? It really doesn't like that either, does it? The bevel, I've never gotten the bevel tool, this modifier, to actually be worth a damn. I guess I would have to manually adjust them. Control-Alt is ring selection, and Alt is selecting loop. I guess I don't understand the term difference between ring selection and loop selection, because this is Control-Alt, and this is, I mean, this is Alt, and this is Control-Alt. They're literally exactly the same thing. So I'm not sure what the difference is. There, that looks cuter. I like it. So we've got a couple more things I'd like to frame up correctly. That would be these, not the whole thing, just the edge up there. That should also be heavy hull. Boom. And in the back, heavy hull. Boom. And then here. Boom. And here. Boom. Alright, not bad. And then we'll just UV unwrap everything. I think I already did that, but since it's just arbitrary garbage, it's fine. Alright, so now we have a new element, which we're going to name Greebold Fuel Tank. Save that, and then we'll go over into here and pull it into the game and see what it looks like. So we're just going to grab this Greebold rocket engine and change it over to a Greebold fuel tank. Boom. And then we will put it into the right spot on the ship. Now the only problem is I believe our Greebold fuel tank is currently set up with a with the wrong materials in the wrong spot. So we're going to have to change what materials are where. Yeah, I don't think I need a bright pink fuel tank. So we'll just go into materials here and grab the right ones. Here's our hull. Here's our heavy hull, which is pink for some reason. That's not how I left it. I guess I'll use highlight instead for now. And then we're going to want our warning, which is really, really not paying attention. Why can't I get this to... There we are. It was not dropping in the right spot for some reason. I think that's it. That's the only three I needed. Just warning, hull, and highlight. But when we put this into place, so just take this engine here and move it away. It's not being very nice to me. Move. Go away. Everybody move. Yeah. Everybody move. There we are. Now the wings are probably a little too big, but for now we'll go ahead and just mount them up as normal. Now there's clearly some stuff missing from here. Oh, that's because I'm using heavy hull instead of highlight. I'll have to figure out what I want to do about that, but it doesn't really matter. It's fine this way. So you can see that what you get is a very, very cool greebling job. And that's the basic idea of what I'm aiming for. Now this is probably not quite the right size, but if we increase the size of both of these guys, whoop, it'll feel a little bit more natural. Now we still have these wings. These wings are not really suited for the current setup, but we can simply move them out and then down, or whatever else we want to do. Or we can simply shrink them until they, not vanish, but until they obey a little bit better. The wings are no longer going to work in this particular setup. We'll just move them in for now. That's fine for now. They produce some connective tissue that doesn't look half bad. Alright, so with this, no shadows, no shading, nothing like that, just raw greebold goodness, you can already see that this is going to be a far more interesting ship design than the other one. And I think that it's going to be better. It's definitely going to be more interesting anyway. So that is pretty neat. I'm going to go ahead and call it a day. I'm going to take some screenshots of how this looks, and then we will post those, and then we'll be done. So that will be that. Just move it until we can see everything. There we are. All right, so let's see whether Twitter's come back. Made some new spaceship parts indie dev. 1 and 2 and 3. Just move it over here. And then one last picture of the parts we made at the beginning. That arm looks dumb though, so I'm going to go ahead and just hide it. Yeah, square on might not be the best look, but that's fine. Alright, now what I have to do is delete my video from YouTube because I'm no longer streaming and I don't want a video on YouTube to tell people I am when I'm not. There we are. And then I'm going to be done. .bow is giving me an explanation of the difference. I have no idea whether or not there is noise on this page, but there sure are a lot of GIFs. Oh, that's interesting. Let me go ahead and try this out so that I know. Wow, that's a really bad page. It's got like a billion obnoxious GIFs on it. So if I understand this correctly, if I'm in line mode, Alt does this and Control Alt does... Ah! Dude, that is great. Thank you so much for taking the time to teach me that. That's going to be hugely helpful. It didn't have any difference the other time I was trying it because that was in face mode, and I don't think it has a difference in face mode. It's only in one of the other modes, so that's pretty fantastic. Thanks. Yeah, that's great. That's going to save me a lot of time next time I need to do some editing. Thank you very much, .bow, and I will see all of you, some of you, on Wednesday. I may start to stream on Saturdays again. At the very beginning, I was streaming on Saturdays. I switched to streaming on Sundays because all the protests were happening on Saturdays. But now all the protests are gone, and all of my friends get together on Sundays. So I may switch back to streaming on Saturday so I can go play board games right now. I'll see you around. Now where's the stop button?